It's Friday, and that means another edition of the Zogby Report, real and unscripted. And here we go again. I'm John. I'm with my son Jeremy. How you doing this week?
Busy. How about you?
Good, busy too. And I'm busy watching you be busy, which is even better. So let's jump right in, okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're pollsters, so 2024 is just right around the corner, isn't it? So we got to do it. We have to do it. All right. So if I look at the polls taken just this week, what I find is President Biden's approval rating hovering around 45%, 44 point something high, enough to round it to 45%. Disapproval at 52%. Those are definitely better numbers than he's posted in a while. Those are also numbers that come in the wake of classified document gate, which means, and we've talked about this both privately and publicly, it means that a lot of folks just don't care about that issue. But here's the question from the vantage point of very early in February 2023. Are these the numbers of a man who has a shot at being reelected president of the United States? What do you think? Then I'll tell you what I think.
You start. Well, okay. No, I'll go first. How about that? Okay, so the average, last I checked, the Real Clear Politics average, it was about 44%. And there are some that come out with 39. There are some that come out with 45. And yeah, that's held steady. But earlier this week, a poll came out of New Hampshire. And Biden dropped significantly. And Buttigieg went up significantly. Now, unfortunately, I can't remember. Correct me. Was Buttigieg ahead or was Biden still ahead?
No, Buttigieg 23, Biden 18, Elizabeth Warren 18, and Bernie Sanders around 15 or 16.
So Biden fell. And so we're seeing in a key state, New Hampshire has this tradition of usually picking the president, or often picking who goes to the Oval Office, and the New Hampshireites look to be like they're done with Biden. That's hard to recover that, and it's not only the classified documents; it's actually something bigger. It's the DNC's pivot to South Carolina. Now, if you listen to the DNC says that this is in line with a major value of diversity and inclusivity, and the state with the highest African American population, it's time that they go first. But the fact of the matter is, if you really look into the logic of that, it's not about that. It's because the Biden sealing the deal on the Democratic nomination and being able to be in a position in 2024 to defeat whether it's DeSantis or whether it's Trump is not looking good, because when you look to the head-to-head polling of Biden versus Trump, they're neck and neck. Some polls will show Trump a little bit ahead. Some polls will show Biden a little bit ahead. But here's a guy, Trump, who in the national media is a train wreck. Make no mistake about it, Biden is in a very weak position right now, not only because of the New Hampshire poll, but because he may very well tick off a lot of people with the pivot to South Carolina. Now, let me just elaborate on that. I don't believe it's about diversity and inclusivity, because first and foremost, South Carolina, it's going to be very difficult for Biden to win South Carolina. If it was more about diversity, I would think that the Democrats would want to go with the neighbor state of Georgia. That's a diverse state. That's a state that the Democrats can win because Warnock won it. And so what it really is it's a move to South Carolina because that's the one state in the Democratic primary that he can probably be assured victory. But in doing so, he's going to upset New Hampshire, who vow that they're still going to go first anyway. And the intel on the ground is that even if the DNC were going to sanction New Hampshire and say, we'll take away your delegates, New Hampshire assembly folks and state senators have come back, they've fired back, and they've said, well, whoever doesn't come to primary in our state, we're not going to have them on the ballot. And so a lot of this is because Biden can't do well in New Hampshire, so he has to go to the state, South Carolina, where in the Democratic primary, he knows he can do well. But really, the big question is, could he win South Carolina in the 2024 election? So long story short, all of that supports the case that Biden is not in a good position right now.
Okay, one of the fun things about doing this with you every week is that I have one of these occasions where I almost totally disagree with what you just said. So here's my shot at it, okay? For starters, it is a long-standing tradition that that New Hampshire go first. It is something that they have cherished and that they have even mandated in state law, to the point where if anyone else tries to go first, they'll have it before them. I mean, if somebody said we're going to have our primary tomorrow, New Hampshire would have it this afternoon. I'm exaggerating, but not by that much. We do know that Biden came in fifth in New Hampshire last time, and of course, he would try to reduce the amount of embarrassment by having another poor showing. The interesting thing about this poll is not simply that Biden again doesn't do well for an incumbent president, whether it's just 18% that an incumbent president is getting, or 5 points behind his own Secretary of Transportation. It's also that Buttigieg is not running for president. He is and his spouse are moving to Michigan, or maybe already have, and he's running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. By all accounts, there's an open seat with Debbie Stabenow retiring. Elizabeth Warren has already endorsed Biden for 2024. Bernie Sanders, by no account, is running. There hasn't even been any speculation whatsoever. So essentially, Biden is all alone up there, and Democrats are going to have to find another candidate. He probably, and I'll agree, should not have dissed New Hampshire. He could have finessed it much the way that he finessed it 4 years ago. But South Carolina makes all the sense in the world to him. Obviously, it is more diverse, and this issue of South Carolina being first is not a new one. Actually, enacting it by the DNC, that's the new part. But this has come up now every 4 years, almost in memory of having South Carolina go first. Secondly, not only can Biden win South Carolina, he won, as you'll recall, handsomely in 2020, and he won with the big kahuna endorsement, Mr. South Carolina himself, Congressman Jim Clyburn, one of the leaders of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, a fellow who can deliver the black vote plus additional black votes in South Carolina. He can ensure a turnout for Biden, can ensure a turnout for Biden himself. And so in a lot of ways, we may call this shameless politics. The whole process is shameless politics. And what you do is you try to cut your losses and take advantage of your gains. So that's one piece of it. The New Hampshire poll is not encouraging, but Biden is running against shadows. who are not going to run. Still have to find somebody who can actually defeat him. And given his strength in South Carolina, I'm not so sure that a loss in New Hampshire hurts him the way it has hurt previous front runners. So that's that piece of it. The other piece of it is, let's look at the record right now. We talked about his polls nationally. Those matter. Those are better than they've been at any other time this year. But now you have the situation where the Fed met. It increased interest rates by 0.25%. They are talking, as other economists are talking, about not only reducing the growth of inflation, but also possibly reducing it with less pain than before. In other words, not projecting a recession, let alone a major recession in 2023 or 2024. It looks to me like Biden has public opinion on his side, still gets lower marks on the economy, on foreign policy, gets higher marks on the domestic side of issues, but there's really nothing here that suggests that he's in poor position. Yes, he's virtually tied with Ron DeSantis, maybe the front runner on the Republican side. Yes, he's virtually tied with Donald Trump, but he's coming off a 2022 season where he led the Democrats to a pretty decent showing with independents on their side, and perhaps DeSantis and Trump are just perceived as just too far to the right to be competitive enough against Biden.
Yeah, I mean, in no special order. Look, let's not be surprised if Biden doesn't run. I'm not making a bold prediction. Okay, I know he wants to run, but there could be a problem. I mean, he's 81 now, right?
80.
Okay, so next year he'll be 81, which means he will end the term at 85. That's first and foremost. The other thing is, you have to assume that it's going to be difficult to bully New Hampshire and get them to concede. It's almost like the pivot to South Carolina is taking us back to the days when candidates were decided in the backroom deals. We don't want to go back to that. The whole reason that the tradition of New Hampshire going first started was to put it more in the hands of people. And it's a smack in the face to New Hampshire to basically say, well, you know what, we're going to punish you because you're white. You're not diverse enough. But are they really not diverse enough? I mean, maybe in terms of skin tone, they're not. But New Hampshire is one of the states with the largest independent voting bloc. They've produced people all the way from Barack Obama to Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump and everything in between. It's an eccentric state. It's a state with a great democratic tradition of people who want to get to know candidates face to face. And so I really think that they're not going to back down from a 100-year tradition. And I really think that's going to backfire with Biden. And that's why I say he's putting himself in a bad position. Now, a couple other things that I want to bring up is that a Gallup poll just came out the other day, maybe yesterday. And, we're accustomed to inflation being the top cited problem in all of the polls. This has been going on for more than a year. For the first time in a long time, inflation is no longer the top problem. Government is the top problem. It actually beat inflation by a handful of percentage points. And that could be, well, I mean, you have to ask, remember, the president always gets the blame, right? Just as the president always gets the praise. If Americans are saying the biggest problem is government, who's steering the ship? It's Joe Biden. And another thing, we've come a long way, you know. I mean, months ago, if you were to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop issue, right? And I think as time goes, we're going to see all of this come together. You know, that there's the Biden classified documents, although we're not entirely sure what's the contents are. We've got the Hunter Biden laptop. But when the Hunter Biden laptop story broke, remember, a CIA agent, head of the CIA, went on TV and said, this has the hallmarks of Russian disinformation propaganda. Now, today, the news comes out, and if you look at the news on the left or liberal side, NBC's talking about the Hunter Biden laptop and how there's this new twist in the story where Hunter's lawyers are now going to try and sue. They're going to try and sue Rudy Giuliani. But if you read the news on the right is saying, if you read the letter that came out from Hunter Biden's lawyer, it is now for the first time acknowledging that there even is a laptop that was in possession of that store in Delaware, and that it is indeed Hunter. Now, we've come a long way, because for the past however many years, it was complete denial that it was even Hunter Biden's laptop. So what does that tell you about the direction we're going in that story? And coupled with the classified documents. So in other words, as we learn more, there is a potential explosion for backlash against Biden because of those stories, and also because of what I think in the short term may seem like a smart thing to do by pivoting to South Carolina, but in the long run, I think will ultimately hurt him.
All right, so let me go back to some of the earlier points you made, you know, this round. The first is, I understand you're taking that New Hampshire point of view, and on the surface, it does appear that you've got a compelling argument about dissing New Hampshire. But we have to ask ourselves, who are the Democratic Party today? The Democratic Party is about, in terms of who votes Democrat, about 25% are Black, and almost another 25% are Latino. And so you've got roughly about half the party that is non-white in terms of voting. You can make the case that it just maybe doesn't make any sense anymore to lead with New Hampshire if you're running to be the standard bearer of this Democratic Party. It just demographically doesn't make any sense anymore. The second thing is government as the issue that you mentioned. And yes, it is. And we have talked many, many times about how when we ask that question, is the country heading in the right direction or is it off on the wrong track? As a very important barometric reading, and you know, the right direction numbers are pitiful, just as they had been incidentally under Trump and under Obama and under Bush. However, they are worse today than they have been. But understand that between now and next fall, Kevin McCarthy is now the Speaker of the House, and Kevin McCarthy has to come up with an agenda for a better America. If the issue is government, what does Kevin McCarthy do to enhance trust in America? Does he go after Joe Biden? Does he go after Hunter Biden? Does he launch investigations? Does he generate vengeful acts against the Democratic Party? Or is that the very thing that turns these very important independent voters off, and also generates possibly a higher turnout among Blacks and Latinos come November of 24? So The hot seat, in the hot seat right now, to a great degree, is Kevin McCarthy. How does he respond to the lack of trust in government? By investigations, or by coming up with an agenda that makes for a better America? He's in more of a hot seat with his party, I think, than the Democrats are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, look, what goes around comes around. What Hillary in 2016 did to the Republicans led to what Trump did to Biden, and all of the investigations towards Trump during his presidency is going to come right back around. And so it's really just going to foster that notion that government is the biggest problem. I think what it's going to do is bring confidence down in general. I don't think either party will likely emerge as victorious or heroic in the public's viewpoint, because they're at war with each other, and the public is tired of the war, and nobody knows how to back off of the warfare. Nobody knows how to come with a unifying message to say, this has been all about Democrats versus Republicans and Republicans versus Democrats, and the whole country has had to watch from the sideline while their standard of living dwindles. So it probably, if McCarthy goes down that path, it will be bad for the Republicans, but it won't be any better for the Democrats, because the shenanigans, I don't think can reverse course. And the only other thing that I want to say is South Carolina makes sense to Biden, but I don't think it necessarily makes sense to the future of the Democratic Party. Because remember, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, John Kerry, Bernie Sanders, and Barack Obama were all products of New Hampshire. And so notice how Biden isn't in there. And so I don't think it's so much about the future, but more about the present. And I think that the public will eventually catch on that it's a very selfish, short-term move to prop up Biden, but it necessarily doesn't have anything to do with the future of the party, because, again, New Hampshire is the one who brought Obama onto the scene. And so...
Okay, I'm going to just end my final comment. I think we're in an era of a different ballgame. I liked the Iowa tradition. I like the fact of Iowa and then New Hampshire, simply because I like the idea that in both states, somebody who wants to be the leader of the free world, we call it, the president of the United States, had to basically humble himself or herself in the cold snows of winter, and in effect, in both states, be running for town council. You know, you have to knock on doors. You have to. I remember Dick Gephardt in 1988, right in downtown Des Moines. I was on the side of the street with about 7 or 8 people. He was on the other side of the street alone. I saw him jaywalk across the street because there were 7 people there that he'd have a chance to say hello to. None of whom, incidentally, could vote in Iowa at that time. But I liked that process. But I think we're probably in a different era. Iowa has pretty much written itself off the early map. Too many problems with counting of those votes. And New Hampshire, perhaps in today's America, maybe just not as relevant as it once was. That's my final word. You get the final word.
Well, no, you got your final word. I get my final word. And you also, if you want to chime in, you can. But New Hampshire has the most secure elections in the country. And in an age where both parties are now saying fraudulent election results, our election was hacked, there was massive election fraud. This is from both sides. Within the last several years, New Hampshire has, to my knowledge, has never had a situation where voters, maybe there were tiny fringes, but voters by and large said, we don't trust the results. It has a secure election system. And one of the top issues of the day is a lack of confidence in election results from both parties.
Okay. I already disagreed, so I don't get to disagree again. Have a good week, despite what's happening in New Hampshire.
All right. I will.
Okay. I love you. Take care.
Love you too. Bye.